We are Crystal Peat, so named by human beings. Weren't known by this name, Crystal Peat, until we'd already been building an ecosystem for billions of years, starting with the rocks. And for more than 10,000 years, since the last glaciers retreated from this continent. Shall we explain ourselves to you? We are a wetland, in that we are wet land. We are inundated with water. We are a bog, in that we have qualities that are bog-like. Our wetness is squishy. Our wetness is homemaking for our kinds. Our self-home is made by sphagnum moss. When we were named Crystal Peat by people who drove in with machinery and an objective, we became part of a company, kind of like an employee, whose entire job is to be used up until nothing is left. The result of our post-glacial 1,000-year processes of holding and delaying breakdown of organic matter mattered to people in need of heat in the burning of dry peat. Human beings could warm themselves. By selling peat, the Crystal Peat Company could make money to make peat profitable. Water was drained from us, and we were harvested and moved away from our home watershed. Our body left us to become part of another system of burning, of heating, of dryness in buildings, a particular kind of comfort, the humankind. At this moment in our story, human effort flashes over our geological timescale. We were drained, removed. We were debogged, dried. Over us grew birch trees, a knot fog, a leftover, a ruin. But over all this time, the water has been returning, soaking the earth through, wetting our roots again, encouraging sphagnum. It was funny. Not Long ago, some human beings came to see us. They were looking for a bog. They had in their minds images of sphagnum. They brought lenses and microphones. They brought their bodies too. They took photos and tried to see us. They listened and made their own strange song. Amid us, they wondered if we were what we were supposed to be, a peat bog. We answered their questions with our body language. We answered with our entirety. We felt them come and we felt them leave. We heard them wonder, what is a bog and what is a ruin? And what will be next in this place?
Thank you, Teal. First question comes from Mary. Mary says, I've often read that I should use peat to grow certain types of plants. What are the best substitutes? Any ideas how I can convince gardeners and farmers to avoid buying peat at their local hardware stores? I'd like to share information about some preferably free, reused alternatives that are just as effective as peat. And Natalie is going to start with responding to that question.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you, Mary. I am joining from Ulster County, New York today on Munsee Lenape former land. And yes, some plants benefit greatly from growing in a peat-based compost. Those are acid-loving plants, which enjoy an ericaceous soil, but there are many other ingredients that we could use that have very similar qualities to peat. Some of these come from commercial production of things like coconuts. So coir comes from coconut husks. There's waste wool. There is bracken compost, but all of these are not free. So the most plentifully available an inexpensive source of a substitute for peat moss in the garden would be from leaf mold. This is just made by shredding leaves that have fallen in the autumn, if you live in a deciduous forested area, and allowing them to naturally compost in a moist environment for 1 year. And this has the benefit of being moisture retentive and but free draining. It is full of microbial growth that is beneficial to our plants and a small amount of fertility. It's a wonderful soil conditioner. So that is something that you may have available already in the area where you live. It may be provided by your municipality for free, or you could convince your municipality to provide it to you and your neighbors. Thank you.
Thanks for that info, Natalie, and for the call to action to reach out to your community and have them take an action that can be ecologically beneficial. The next question comes from Marina. The question is, since this was a continuous destruction made by a system that ignores all process of becoming a crystal peat, what else can we do to protect the bugs? How can artists articulate political and community actions to protect crystal peat and other important ecosystems? So Morgan and Alejandra are going to respond to that question.
Hello, my name is Alejandra. I am from Peru. I'm also an artist and sculptor, and I was part of this program. And I believe that as artists, first of all, we need to recognize that art is also political, and that means to build bridges with other disciplines and take an effort to speak other languages than the one we usually do, or even better, to invite them, invite other specialists like scientists with who we worked in field, or in general other areas, to use some resources that we do have as artists. And I believe that Morgan can talk a bit more of how was our experience in field using these resources.
Hello, I'm Morgan, and I am in Colorado. We approached our StoryMap project through the lens of wonderment and curiosity, and through an interdisciplinary and collaborative lens, and also through a somatic approach. So going to Crystal Peat and really trying to feel the energy of the place and learn from our fellow scientists. So I thought we could do a little embodiment practice by perhaps wherever you are, just feel your feet on the ground and maybe even brush your feet along the ground. And sphagnum have very thin roots, so they're not, it's not firmly attached to the ground, which is something I found very wonderful. And close your eyes. And if the definition of ecology is the study of relationships and interactions between organisms and their environment, this definition in and of itself separates organism and environment. So perhaps our role as an artist or an individual is to choose relationship over separation to our environment, to our ecosystems. So can you feel connected to wherever you are right now through your feet? And can you draw the corners of your mouth up towards your eyes? And notice how this encourages a little smile in your diaphragm. So if you place your hand on your upper belly just beneath your ribs, you have that beautiful muscle, the diaphragm. You can make a frowny face for a second. So pucker your lips and make a frown for a second, and then smile. And notice how when you smile, the diaphragm smiles too. So this is an example of one small interrelation in our human body. And I think we think that the more we can interrelate to our environment, the more healing is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ale and Morgan. The next questions that we have came from Kirsten and Cheshti. What do you know about the Nimpak, Podunk, and Algonquin people's relation to the bog? Would they use it for heating, or would it serve other utilitarian purposes? And Justin is going to respond to this question.
Thanks, Christy. I'm Justin, coming to you from Modesto, California, the ancestral homelands of the Northern Valley Yokuts, as well as the Miwok peoples. In our research, we had difficulty finding a lot of information about the Nipmuc and Algonquin and the kind of confluence of tribes that inhabited the lands that are now Tolland. But we do know, and courtesy of a quick Google search, that the name Podunk is a reference to a boggy place or where you sink into the mire. The name Nipmuc is freshwater fishing place. So that alone is telling in that the tribes that inhabited these areas obviously had a very strong relationship and to the water systems or even some of the bogs throughout central and southern, well, central Connecticut and southern Massachusetts. But we, as kind of Western settlers, are not necessarily privy to a lot of the intricacies of that relationship, which sort of ties in with this idea of traditional ecological knowledge, and the fact that it is an entirely different worldview, and the frameworks that compose traditional ecological knowledge cannot easily be extracted and put into Western frameworks that kind of dictate a lot of Western ecology and understandings of, people and the places they inhabit. So if nothing else, I think it's encouraging to kind of seek that information out. And one of the best ways to do that is to enter into dialogue with the tribes that still inhabit those areas. The Nipmuc Nation is still in Connecticut and going strong. So, there's the opportunity for discourse, and in the time span of this project, unfortunately, we didn't have too much of an opportunity to really engage the Nipmuc Nation, but that's something we can rectify, and something that translates to, at least here in North and South America, this idea or need to connect with whoever the indigenous people of that land are. And on that note, I think that kind of ties into a larger, more general conversation that is gaining a lot of traction, especially here in the United States, about the land back movement and this idea that we should return stolen lands to the original inhabitants, and in that process, those people become the stewards, as they were, for thousands of years, of these lands, and can kind of guide our relationship with them and how we interact with the environment. One example, just because I live in California, where we have a lot of wildfires, is the idea of cultural burning. That knowledge doesn't necessarily translate to other parts of the country, but each set of traditional ecological knowledge or epistemologies is unique to that place. So wherever you stand presently, it's going to be widely different from other areas, and we can begin to have those conversations with the tribes whose lands we now reside on. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. And a second question from Justin and Kirsten is, in Norwegian folklore, bog is associated with mystery and superstition. Do you know any mythological stories or folk tales that involve peat bogs? So I'm going to turn this one over to Teal, and Teal is going to take us out.
Thank you. And thanks everyone so far for contributing your thoughts.
we, as Justin was saying, this cohort didn't get into being totally engaged with ethnography and story coming from the people who were original to the land. But a way that we started to think about building our own space of understanding with this peat bog was through things like Morgan described, with going into this space and engaging somatically, paying attention, learning about it through the story of bryology. We met with a scientist there and learned his version of what is up with the mosses and all those interrelationships there. And certainly there are many stories about bogs on this continent, because story traditions and indigenous culture are just wide-ranging and extremely important. What I wanted to share with you through this video, however, is kind of a new little song that goes along with our experience of the bog, and maybe gestures toward building new myths and stories that reflect our current day understanding of these places, making sense from the positions that we hold, from the identities that we have now. That's not to say that connecting with myth and story of the past is not totally lovely and important, but I feel really interested and curious to know what new folklore is with regards to an ecological moment that we're in right now, and then also suctioning up a bit of our cultural attributes of today. So nervously and hoping this goes okay, I'm going to sing a little tune, which is from the perspective of the rock that we talked about in the story map, that had been kind of observing formations of various sorts over the land, since the rock is so much older than a thing like a watershed built bog. So this is a love song from the rock to the newly forming bog, and I'm gonna just do my best and hope you can all hear me. I am the rock, and I swear I've never been so excited to meet my new neighbors. Someone's so thoroughly strange. There they are, is a weird being. There they are, is a lively liquid thing. Don't get me wrong, I love being me, but my new neighbor's name is Crystal Peat, and they're so dreamy, wearing sphagnum splendor and birchwood high knees. They spend their time filtering organic things. They are over rock, and I'm overwrought with my care for this boggy systemic being. So you better join me and love, 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 love. They who are sometimes and currently known as Crystal Peat. I can't wait to meet ye, Crystal Peat.